And your inner circle behaviors would be behaviors that lead to that, what we call that pitiful demoralization, right? That bottom line behaviors, the ones for you that wreck you, that leave you feeling more disconnected afterwards, that heap the shame on. And because they're behaviors, they're subjective. So working with your sponsor, you're the only person who determines what's in your inner circle. And then you work with your sponsor to either over time add things to that, take things out. It's a process.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of I Love Being Sober. My name is Tim Westbrook, and I'm the CEO and founder of Camelback Recovery here in the always sunny and always sober Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people find their path to long-term recovery. We started the show because there's so much inaccurate information out there and bad content about the world of recovery and addiction treatment. And this is a platform for us to share the truth. And there is so much more to getting clean and sober than just going to treatment for 30 days, than just working a 12-step program. There's so much more. Those are integral parts of the process. The 12-step program saved my life, and I know it saved lots of lives out there, but there's just a lot more to it. And things like food and nutrition, self-care, exercise and fitness, music, developing new healthy lifestyle habits to replace the old lifestyle habits that got us in trouble. These are some of the things that I talk about on this show. And today, it's an honor to have my friend Tim Ringgold here. And Tim is a board-certified music therapist, columnist, author, and host of the podcast, Reduce Your Stress. He's provided music therapy to thousands of teens and adults to help them lower anxiety and reduce pain. Tim is also an award-winning international speaker, having shared the stage with some of the top minds on music, the brain, and personal development, including Tony Robbins. Tim was the first person to give a TEDx talk on music therapy back in 2012. He is also a former regional president of the American Music Therapy Association. Tim, welcome to the show. So good to have you.
Tim, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so good. I know we've been working on this for a while, and so good to have you here. And I have your book here too.
Hey,
Sonic Recovery: Harness the Power of Music to Stay Sober, which yes. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. So Tim, give me a little backstory about you, music and addiction.
Yeah, man. It's great. It's great to be here, and it's always great to hear other people's story because you hear yourself in it. So I'm happy to share mine a little bit today. I'm a kid who grew up on the East Coast, who found himself on stage when he was 4, and I remember actually it was like, just, this is why I'm here on the planet. It's music. It always has been, and I was a very lucky kid. Had a great upbringing. What didn't appear like any kind of acute trauma. Later on in life, I went back and realized there was a very specific relational, spiritual trauma, which I would love to touch on today because I think it would be enlightening to the listeners. But had a good life, man, until I was like 22. And in 22, on April 18th, 1995, while I was at a live show listening to some music, my 5 best friends were murdered.
Whoa.
And I ended up going to 5 funerals in 4 days. I'd basically get up, bury a friend, get as hammered as possible, pass out, and then wake up the next day and do the whole thing over again. And again.
Five of your friends were murdered?
Yep.
How did that happen?
Well, it was, all I can say, it was a escalating tenant-landlord dispute that went just, way beyond. And it was the day, for those of you who remember, the Oklahoma City bombing, when Timothy McVeigh blew up the federal building. Mm-hmm. They were murdered the night before. So on the news, When I turned on the news, there's the federal building blown in half on the national channels. And then on the local channel is my best friend's house burned to the ground and they're pulling body bags out of the ashes. And I thought it was the end of the world, because it was the end of my world, because my band rehearsed in that house every Wednesday night. And this was Tuesday night. And if it had just been the next day, I would have been one of those 5, because only 3 friends lived there and 2 were just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Wow.
And so burying 5 friends in 4 days is not something I recommend for anybody's, journey.
Right.
But I played music at all of their funerals and at their memorials. It was my way of saying goodbye. I was like the musician in the group, and my community embraced me, even though it tore me up. And the night of the last funeral, Tim, I went back and went to some live music. And for the first 2 hours since I had gotten the news, I found peace. And no amount of drugs, alcohol, porn, food, or cable TV, and I used them all that whole week, had numbed that pain. But the music did. And it was a pivotal moment in my life. And basically from that moment, I was like, that's it. I know what I want to do with my life. I want to be the instrument, pun intended, that provides peace for others in their toughest times. And so that's what my journey's been ever since.
So that was when you were 22 years old.
Yep.
And you were still drinking.
I was drinking, smoking, drugging, sexing, porning.
Yeah.
All
the
doing
everything. You were doing everything and anything to numb the pain.
Yep.
So when did you realize that you had a problem with drugs and alcohol? Or what was your drug of choice?
Yeah. So turns out sex was my kryptonite.
Okay.
I was a guy who was in the music business, and they say sex, drugs, and rock and roll in that order for a reason. Okay. And I loved that lifestyle. And when I left the music industry, I was able to walk away from drugs and alcohol. It didn't bother me at all. But women in porn were clearly kryptonite for me. Like, I was just powerless around it. And so that's why I use the word kryptonite, because I feel like for those of us who are walking a recovery journey, there are actually things that affect others that don't affect us. And then there are things that affect us that don't affect others. And it's like, so kryptonite is my term. And I didn't really put 2 and 2 together, man. It took a long time to really realize that I had this problem. And it was probably not until 2003 that I fully understood that I was powerless over women, and that genuinely, like, step one, that like my life had become unmanageable. And I walked my ass into a 12-step meeting, February 17th, 2003, scared out of my mind, like, oh my God, freak show. Oh my God. And in the meeting, it was in a circle in a church, and
they started SA meeting or SLAA?
It was SAA.
Okay.
And by the time they got to me, I was like, hi, Tim, I'm Tim. And apparently I'm a sex addict, because you told my story and you told my story and you talked about thoughts and feelings that I've never shared with anybody, but I have that exact thing going on inside of me. And it was such an eye-opening experience, because what I've found in my recovery journey and in my clinical journey is that there are a lot of characteristics of thinking in the addictive mind where the person thinks they're the only one that's either victimized or suffering or thinking about whatever it is. And when you go to a meeting and suddenly you realize not only are you not the only one, but it's actually a symptom. It's like a cough. Your thoughts can be a symptom, and you thought you were the only one and you thought you were special. That was wonderfully like eye-opening for me, because I realized, 1, I'm not alone. And 2, oh, okay, other people have gotten sober. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. I don't have to try anything new. I don't have to, I can just follow in other people's footsteps, take the next right step. And when I called the 800 number for that meeting, a guy named Klaus answered the phone, Tim, and he said, I got good news for you. I called this same 800 number 10 years ago when my wife served me divorce papers, and we've been together ever since. And I thought, whoa, If you've gotten that far down the road with divorce papers and then walked it back from that edge, there's hope. And Klaus gave me hope. And I think that was the first gift of recovery was hope. And the second gift was this feeling I'm not alone.
Right. Okay. So when did you realize you were a sex addict? At what point?
I didn't know I was a sex addict. I mean, I didn't know until I was sitting in the room. Oh, you know what it was? I knew I might have a problem.
When did you start thinking you might have a problem?
I didn't even think I had a problem until I filled out on SAA.org or SAA-recovery.org. There's a questionnaire. Like, you might need to go to a meeting if, right. And it's like 10 questions. They're very specific. I took the questionnaire. I answered yes to 8 of them. And the grading, the criteria was, if you answer yes to 2 of these, you might want to go to a meeting. So that was when I scored 8 out of 10. I was like, there's something really going on. Right. And I was in total delusion. Like, when I finally went to write out an inventory of all the people I had been unfaithful with my girlfriend with.
Yeah.
If you had asked me how many were on the list, I would have told you 4, and I would have believed it.
Right.
Right. So my brain had compartmentalized my behavior so well, I wasn't consciously aware of the wreckage until I did an inventory. And I got, those like old school lined paper, there's like 26 lines. I filled every line, and I was like mortified and shocked and surprised because the names kept coming. And then I had to turn the piece of paper over, and I was like, what? And I went to bed, and then I woke up the next day and more names came back to me.
Wow.
My subconscious had just buried all that behavior because of all the shame and the cognitive dissonance. I didn't want to know myself as a player, as someone who was sleeping around, as someone who was unfaithful. And so I would have passed a lie detector test that I didn't have a problem.
Right. And how old were you when you went to your first SA meeting?
2003. So I'm 31.
Okay. Point. So 9 years after the major incident where 5 of your friends were murdered.
Yep. So the music, and the reason I tell that story is that that story is like the origin story of when I realized the power that music has over my suffering and my pain and my experience of the world. But I didn't connect the 2 dots along that journey, right? I was still just going along, wrecking ball, out of control, not really thinking I have a problem. Then when I got into recovery, I went back to school a year later for music therapy. And at the time, I wanted to go work in hospice. But as I was in my music therapy career, or like in school, I remember doing my first rotation in a inpatient mental health facility. And I was working with guys who are struggling with a number of different things, but one of them being addiction. And then when I went to do my internship, I worked in a 28-day residential program, and I just saw myself sitting in all my groups.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. So now I'm in this position where this one leg of me, a brother in recovery, is here. And then this other leg of me is this clinician who knows something about music that others don't. And I can help people in recovery lean on music the right way to actually support them in their recovery and prevent them from relapsing due to their own music. And I was so happy because my 2 worlds came together.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay. So when you were at the treatment center, mm-hmm. where was that where was that in your journey?
I was about 5 years into my recovery journey at that point.
Okay. Now, when you got into recovery for your sex addiction, were you drinking? Were you doing drugs at the time as well?
Not, I would say, let's see. So it's 2003. It wasn't that I ever identified that alcohol or So weed was my drug of choice if you want to use substances that isn't alcohol. So I was a recreational stoner and drinker, but I wasn't drinking regularly or smoking regularly. I also wasn't abstinent. It just wasn't on my radar.
Yeah.
So I might have a beer or two when I go out on the weekends, but I might not. And then I might go months without smoking. And then I might see some friends old stoner buddies, we might get stoned once every 6 months or a year. Just wasn't really, part of the constellation of what was really hitting for me.
And what is your sobriety date?
So that's a really good question, because in sex addiction, sobriety is a little bit different around using. We have the 3 circles.
Yep.
Right. And so my circles have changed throughout the years. And there are things that at one point were in my middle circle, went to my inner circle. Now they're back. And for those who aren't familiar with that, can I just kind of explain that really quickly?
Give us a quick breakdown of the three circles.
Yeah. So in sex addiction and SAA, we define behavior in 3 different circles. So your inner circle, your middle circle, and your outer circle. And your inner circle behaviors would be behaviors that lead to that, what we call that pitiful demoralization, right? That bottom line behaviors, the ones for you that wreck you, that leave you feeling more disconnected afterwards, that heap the shame on. And because they're behaviors, they're subjective. So working with your sponsor, you're the only person who determines what's in your middle circle, or in your inner circle. And then you work with your sponsor to either over time add things to that, take things out. It's a process. And then your middle circle is like behaviors. You could look at them 2 ways. 1, they might be a slippery slope towards your inner circle. 2, they might be a safety net where they're like the least worst option. Like if you're really feeling kind of squirrely and out of control and you engage in a middle circle, it's not great. Better than your inner circle. So that's kind of like yellow light, if you will. Right. That's your middle circle, right? And then your outer circle are all the behaviors that lead to you feeling more connected. What we might use the term healthy behaviors, recovery behaviors. And the idea is that you could put everything you do from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep in one of those 3 circles. And my sponsor, his definition of sobriety, I'll quote my sponsor. His definition of sobriety is that it's a process of working with another person to determine what's good and bad for you. And so it's a little bit of a different way of looking at sobriety. So it's dynamic.
Right.
Right.
It's not I had a beer or I didn't have a beer.
Yes.
I did a line of coke or I didn't do a line of coke. I smoked some crack or I didn't smoke some crack. I mean, that's very black and white. You either did or you didn't. And then if you have these red, yellow, green behaviors, that's what they also call them, right? So yep. the red behaviors are those are your bottom line behaviors. Those are the things that lead to the guilt and the shame and the demoralization and you feeling horrible about yourself.
Yep.
Then you've got the yellow behaviors, which are somewhere in between. And then you've got the green behaviors, which lead to a healthy lifestyle. Those are the healthy lifestyle habits. Those are for you playing the guitar. Those are for you running, exercising, eating healthy, having good, healthy conversations with people, having good, healthy conversations with women that don't lead to objectifying them and using the, and whatever would lead to you not feeling good about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great. So for me in my journey, like sleeping with other women, right? Inner circle behavior. Always been an inner circle behavior since my first day of recovery. Mm-hmm. Been abstinent from sleeping with women since the first day of my recovery. Very grateful for that, right? Pornography, whole different can of wax for me. Pornography, and for some people in recovery, it's a middle circle behavior. For some people, it's an inner circle behavior. For a long time, it was in my inner circle, and I really struggled with getting any kind of time more than 2 years. Okay. I could get a year, could get 2 years, and then I'd have a slip, and I'd look at it, and then the clock might start over, if you will, but the frequency went from daily to monthly. And then it went from monthly to semi-annually. And then it went from semi-annually to annually. And then it went to biannually. And then it might slip back to maybe quarterly. But there's a really important thing when it comes to behavior, which is frequency, intensity, and duration. And if you're changing any kind of behavior, there's like on, off, like we were talking about with drinking or with smoking, right? Where it's like, never did it again. Someone who's working a recovery journey, the challenge of the sobriety date idea, like forever thing, is I find a lot of people get sober incrementally. And what I mean by that is they put down until they don't. And that's a really short period of time. But then as they practice their recovery, those periods of time get longer and longer, and they're actually progressing. But I know in certain circles, they feel a lot of shame around the story is it's chronic relapse. And yet they're actually putting together longer and longer periods of sobriety each and every time. And so they're getting better at the game, almost like they're walking. They're taking 10 steps before they fall over as a kid. Then they're taking 20 steps before they trip. Now they're taking 100 steps, right? And for me, my journey has been this like incremental kind of way out here. And I would love to come on here and be totally honest and go, oh yeah, I haven't looked at porn in 20 years, but I wouldn't be honest. I couldn't tell you that. That was the one that's been the hardest for me to quit. I'd say right now I'm probably in the 4 months, since I viewed any, and feeling rather safe right now working. I still have a sponsor I work with. We talk on the phone probably 5 days a week. That's the strongest part of my 12-step like journey. And yeah, that was the thing that at first I kept looking at it through this shame lens. And then I looked back and I was like, dude, your relationship with it is totally different than it was when you were out of control. Like, let's try to stop beating ourselves up so much. Let's be a little more gentle, and yet not take our hands off the wheel and be like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I got no problems at all. But to be, to ride that kind of fader between the two.
That's the same thing as, and I would say one of the, not problems, but problems with AA is that if someone slips, if they relapse, it's like, oh, I started over. I've got less than 30 days. And it's like, yeah, you have less than 30 days. However, your recovery journey doesn't start over. You're not starting from the ground.
No,
you had a slip. You've already done some things. You're already on the journey to recovery. So it's part of the journey for some people, not for everybody.
Right.
For most people, relapse is part of the journey.
Yeah. It's any kind of behavior change in your life is going to probably require more than one go. And I just found, like, my first sponsor, he walked into his first meeting and never struggled again. And I was just like, his nickname was Gandalf the Wizard, because he was like this sage guy and white beard and never fucked up afterwards. And I was like, God damn it. Like, I can't be like you. I must be really broken, because obviously this program works for you, but it doesn't work for me. I can't put together any time. And I used to think the whole thing about less than 30 days, it's like less than 30 days continuous in this run, right?
Right.
And as if it's you're the same person as a newbie who walked in, and it's like, let's all agree it's an imperfect program, and most of us who have been in it are grateful and know that we'd either be dead or in jail without it. And so we hold both in our hand, right? We just say, yes.
Okay, so you said that you were still smoking weed and drinking. Are you still smoking weed and drinking a little bit, or are you completely abstinent from drugs and alcohol as well?
I gave up drinking January of 2019. I noticed that every time I had gotten close to sleeping with someone, alcohol was involved.
Right.
And so for me, it was like the kerosene that was lighting the fire. So what happened for me, Tim, was I first I'm also a speaker. So prior to COVID, I'd be on the road, 2, 3, 4 times a month speaking at conferences or at retreats. And I would get into trouble on the road and I would drink on the road, 2 beers, and then suddenly I'm flirting. And I was waiting on someone else's integrity to keep me safe. And sometimes I'd meet people who didn't have that problem and they were like, let's go. And and I got really close to the edge several times and I realized alcohol was involved every time. So first I quit drinking on the road. And then my wife wanted to quit. And I saw the ads for 1 year no beer on Facebook. And it was like December. And I remember I cringed. And I was like, what's that about? Right? Well, why did I just pull back when I considered 1 year no beer? And so instantly I was like, oh, okay, I guess I better sign up.
Right.
So I signed up, with my wife, like not on the Facebook, but in my head, like I'm going to do, a year, no alcohol. And then 2020 came around and I was like, I don't really feel like going back to alcohol. And I'm really glad I didn't, because there would have been lots of opportunities to drink in 2020. Because what I noticed, Tim, is once I made the decision that I don't drink, I don't have to make any decisions anymore. I don't have to decide whether or not I'm going to drink today, or whether or not I'm going to drink tonight, or whether or not I'm going to drink tomorrow, or whether or not I'm going to drink because of blank, or whether or not, there's no more decisions involved. It's just off the table. And that has been very, it's just freeing. And people ask me, do you miss it? And I was like, about 5% of the time.
Right.
That's about it.
Well, and alcohol leads to other behaviors, right? I mean, because what I think of when I hear you say, okay, you're clean from your bottom line behaviors, and then it's like, okay, so instead of resorting to your bottom line behaviors, you resort to something else. So you resort to alcohol, you resort to drugs, you resort to smoking weed, you resort to
video games, gambling,
shopping, workaholism, whatever. If you resort to alcohol because you still drink, then next thing you know, your judgment is not so great.
Dude, that is so clear. You nailed it.
It's like the alcohol leads to the behaviors.
Yes.
And you hear people that say, oh, I'm a heroin addict, I'm a crack cocaine addict, I'm a meth addict, I don't have a problem with alcohol. The problem, so I can still drink, right? I've seen this happen so many times, and they have a few drinks and they might be able to do it a few times without going, but then the next thing you know, they're back to the meth, they're back to the heroin, they're back to the cocaine. And
I don't even know how they got there. How'd I get here? Well, I'll tell you.
What happened? Right. Okay, so you made the decision that this was going to be in your life, music, therapy, and you were going to help people.
Yes. Yep.
And so what happened? Tell me what transpired next.
So what that looks like, the reason I was a musician and wanted to inspire people was because of my friend's journey. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to give people that piece. But in the music business, that culture is unhealthy. So I found myself being easily, socially influenced and environmentally influenced into all kinds of bad behavior in that world. And I discovered there was this career called music therapy, kind of like being a physical therapist working in the same places that a physical therapist works, except using music instead of exercise to treat people. Mm-hmm. And I am one part athlete, one part musician. And at one point, I wanted to become a physical therapist, but it only felt like it was skin deep, like it was tissue. It didn't touch the soul and it didn't touch the mind. So I kind of got bored with it. When I discovered that there was a career called music therapy, it was like putting the two in a blender. Right. And in the moment I discovered the field, Tim, I filled out my college application to go back to school, my financial aid in that same computer Google search. and never looked back because I realized I can help others through the toughest times of their life. And I can do it during the day from home or in a clinic or in a school or in a hospital in a professional setting. And that kind of social environmental cue and influence will be really healthy for me compared to being in clubs and in venues and on the road and at festivals where I might be wanting to use music to help others, but that social and environmental cue was sex, drugs, sex, drugs, sex, drugs. And so it's a much safer way for me to express this desire to help people is as a music therapist than as a musician. So it had everything to do with and plus I don't have to be on the road. So I don't have to miss my kids' childhood. And that was really important to me. And so I went back to school 5 years full time in my 30s and became board certified as a music therapist in 2008. And my joke is I haven't worked since because my experience is that I get paid to play and pray. Like that's because you don't work music, you play music. And so I just have this people are like, oh, you're so lucky. I'm like, well, I have a student loan and 5 years of my 30s that I don't get back. But aside from that, I knew that for the next 30 to 40 years, I would be just doing what I love in a really safe environment, helping people and not missing my kids' childhood. So giddy up.
Yeah. What instruments do you play?
Well, my main instrument is my voice. That's what I'm trained in since childhood. And then my second instrument and my accompanying instrument is guitar. And then additionally to that, I play the Native American flute and I play percussion, tons of percussion. And I can kind of, pick my way around a keyboard. I know theory.
Okay. And you're going to be playing music for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's how I express myself. Right. And that phrase, who am I so for me, just to go into the quick spiritual, I'm this one tiny fraction of the whole that came into form to experience itself. And what do I want to be doing while I'm in form? I want to express myself athletically and artistically. And when I say artistically, I say musically specifically. So that is the ultimate joy for me in life is when I experience myself playing. And that's the verb playing, because I play sports and I play music. And so I'm just here to play. And then it's okay, now how do I do that in a way that causes light and literally shines light everywhere around me and increases and improves those around me, those little fractions of me. How can I hook me up, the other me's? Which way do I want to do that? Well, I really want to do that through this medium of music. This is just so thrilling because I experience the same joy you do in a different way when you're the listener and I'm the creator. Mm-hmm. Just like I experience the joy of music when I'm the listener and you're the creator. It's a win-win.
Yep. What are some of the myths that we have around making music in our culture?
Well, the main ones are that it requires talent and that there's this thing like the music gene, and there's just no such thing. There's no music gene. Genes are far more complex than, the gene. Yeah. It doesn't work that way. We like to try to make simple answers out of complex things. So every body, the human body, every body runs on rhythm. It's the organizing principle of your body. Everything we do in rhythm. Our cells run on rhythm, our organs run on rhythm, our body runs on rhythm, which is the foundation of music. And so every body has the ability to be musical. And we don't think that way in our culture. We think some people have it, most don't. And
I've never thought about it like that. You're right. Everybody has rhythm.
Everybody has rhythm. Not everybody's as coordinated as the other, but everybody has rhythm. So if you can, tap, snap, clap, hum, rap, sing, strum, or scratch, you can be musical because, Tim, everybody scratches an itch in perfect rhythm.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
So what we do is we take an egg shaker and we just pretend we're scratching. And we're perfectly rhythmic people. Some of us have been handy around the house. If you can hammer a nail, here's a frame drum. I can go, let's see on camera. If I can hammer a nail, I can play a frame drum. If I can bounce a ball, I can play a hand drum. It's so much simpler than we make it out to in our culture. And so that is the big myth, is that most of us don't have it and some of us do. We all got it.
Right. How did music originate?
Oh, that's a great, man. That's like a whole course. So there's two lenses to think through. One is evolutionarily. So music's what's called a proto-language. It's a pre-language. So we sang before we spoke as a species in order to communicate. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to evolutionarily, developmentally, from childhood.
We sang before we spoke.
Yes. Yes. We had sound before we had language. Okay. So we would use sound to communicate and to connect. And then we developed language later on. And there's a mirror of this, which is developmentally with kids. Kids sing before they speak. They vocalize and they sing before they have language. And moms in all cultures, all moms sing to their babies, and all moms sing in the same stepwise motion across the globe, regardless of language, because the kids don't have language yet. They're not paying attention to the words. They're paying attention to the melody and the sound of mom's voice and the tempo, meaning the speed of it. And so we are both developmentally and evolutionarily, music comes before language. It's kind of our stepping stone.
You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about a dog barking. Dogs bark in rhythm too.
Yes.
Birds chirp in rhythm.
Yes.
Crickets chirp in rhythm. Yes. Like everything's in rhythm. It's not, nothing is out of whack. It's always in perfect rhythm.
Yes.
In the same sequence, the same frequency, the same sound.
Yes. It is the fundamental organizing principle of the universe. There is a rhythm to the breathing in and the breathing out of the entire universe.
Right. Okay. So how was this discovered that music, or where was this discovered that music was the first thing that was developed?
That's a really good question. So
before actually communicating your language?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And my honest answer is that when I'm spouting out these brainiac little quotes about evolutionary, they are from a guy named Dr. Annie Patel, who's a neuroscientist who studies music in the brain. And this guy named Dr. David Wolf from The Ohio State University, who is also a researcher on music in the brain. And I got to attend a real high level conference and I was a speaker with these guys at this one particular conference. And they started to talk about the origin of music and at where it started in our journey as a species. And so both of those men, their lectures were the ones who really taught me that piece of it. But there's a great book called This Is Your Brain on Music. It's by Dr. Daniel Levitin. He's also a neuroscientist. He was a recording engineer without the Alan Parsons Project. And then he went back to school to become a neuroscientist. And in his book, This Is Your Brain on Music, he gives you a really great journey through music without losing you along the way. It's a great read, and I highly recommend it to anybody. You'll come away with such a deeper appreciation for the power of music in your life.
So what happens in the brain? Like, how does music interact with the brain? And I guess, how is it relevant to addiction treatment?
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. What's the point? Well, music is the most complex stimulus in nature for the human brain to process. So it requires every subregion of the brain to activate, to take in and take apart music and put it back together. And when we do that, and we have the experience that we're either making the music ourselves or we're listening to music we enjoy, our reward system gets activated. So the reward system is what gets hijacked during drug addiction. And that same reward system gets activated when we either make music or we listen to the music we enjoy. So it is pleasure inducing. Now, that's relevant to people in recovery who are going through this journey of anhedonia, where they're not feeling anything in early recovery or early treatment because their reward system has literally been shot to hell and their brain is recalibrating and they literally don't feel anything, right? So introducing pleasure causing behaviors back into their life is really important so that they don't feel like they're just dead inside or that there's no fun left. So whenever we make music or listen to the music we enjoy, particularly dopamine is released in the brain, and that's that feel good chemical. When we make music together or we listen to music together, oxytocin gets produced, which is the kind of the social glue, the hug drug, if you will, in our brain. That feeling that we're connected to someone else is released when we're making music in a group or we're listening to it. And then if we listen to relaxing music, our brain releases prolactin. And prolactin is a chemical that allows us to kind of feel this kind of like the afterglow, like this chill, that's really nice. That feeling that we have when we're just really satisfied is prolactin, and slow tempo music will trigger the release of that. So, I mean, everybody knows music's good for their mood and their spirit. But when I learned like what music did specifically to the brain and the body, I got really, really curious. And then the last piece that's really important for a person in recovery is that it turns off the stress response. So our nervous system runs in these like 3 speeds or 3 gears: rest and digest, which is your kind of your normal default nervous system, your connection mode, creativity mode. And then we have the fight flight response. People are familiar with that. That's that sympathetic nervous system activation. That's when we go into protection mode and reaction mode, right? That's when we don't consider like the behaviors we're doing in the moment. We may not be fully aware of what that's going to do in the future. We're just like right in the moment dealing with whatever's going on. And music resets that nervous system faster than any oral medication. And most people have experienced this for themselves when they were in an emotional state and a song came on. You'll hear the story. I hear the story all the time. I was here, this song came on. Before the song was even over, I was totally in a different state. It shifted me. It pulled me out. And when I listen to like recovery specific songs on YouTube, in the comments, man, I will read over and over, this song saved my life. This song is the thing that got me into recovery. This song's the one that helped me through my toughest time. And as a musician, I've heard that personally as well. And so we know that music turns off that stress response. And when we have the stress response, Tim, that's when the brain triggers cravings, because it's the brain's way of trying to self-soothe. So what we want tools that work fast to turn that stress response over before our brain can issue, a Whopper-sized craving, because the brain's not designed to withstand cravings. It's designed to do the behavior. That's the system's design. It's trying to self-soothe. So we can use music in those moments to reset.
The brain is designed to do the behavior.
Yeah.
Not to resist, which is why willpower doesn't work.
Exactly. And that's why people feel terrible about themselves, because they don't understand that a craving isn't designed to be withstood. It's designed to be listened to and followed. It was Gabor Mate at Wanderlust in 2016 who said, and I will never forget the moment, he said, a craving is your brain's way of trying to love itself.
Wow. Because it's looking for the solution.
Because it's trying to self-soothe. All it's trying to do.
For the solution, the behavior that's going to soothe.
Whatever is going to soothe. And that part of the brain doesn't care if it's healthy, legal, socially acceptable, hip, doesn't care. Doesn't care if it caused a bunch of problems the last 27 times you did it. Doesn't care about the future ramifications. It's like the number one answer. It just knows in the moment that will scratch the itch.
Right. And Gabor Mate also says addiction is a solution to the pain. The question is not why the addiction. The question is why the pain.
That's it.
And that's why in addiction treatment, we have to look at the root of the trauma, because the pain is what is the cause of the addiction.
That's it.
And of the bad behaviors. So is there a difference between, like, is there a type of music that's better to turn off the stress response than another type of music? Because there's lots of kinds of music. So you're saying music therapy. So is any music therapy? Like,
oh, that's a great question. Is any music therapy?
Can I turn on Eazy-E and is my stress response going to be turned off?
Well, here's what the research shows. It depends on whether or not you like Eazy-E, and it depends whether or not you already have any neuro associations to using while listening to Eazy-E.
Makes sense. Yep.
Because what happens is we have party playlists.
Yep.
We all got hammered to music. Come on.
Yep.
And so there's a neuro association between the music we were listening to, the emotions we were feeling, and the behaviors we were doing. And so I remember early in my recovery, like if I put on, at the time for me, EDM, dance music,
right,
within 4 beats, I was thinking about women. 4 beats. It was like coursing through my veins. I was like, oh, I can't even come near this. I could listen to any other kind of music, but that music just triggered me because that was always the soundtrack. The good news is that neuroassociation tapers and prunes and atrophies over time. So in long-term recovery, you can go back and you can check in and listen to music from that time, and you'll observe the music. You might even have a memory, but you won't have that emotional charge to it. It's similar to the grief journey, when early in grief, there's emotional charge with the memory, and then over time, you're left with the memory and the emotional charge fades. Music operates very similarly. And so it's really important for people in recovery to understand to avoid your party playlists for as long as until you check in with them and notice that they don't start to trigger that kind of emotional charge. And the second thing people ask is, what's the right type to listen to? And the right type of music to listen to is the music that you enjoy, that you associate with safety, connection, inspiration, comfort. So if you love Celine Dion, Tim, hey man, all the power to you. Go at it. Listen to Celine. If you like, right? If somebody likes Michael Bolton, hey, good for you. Don't put it on. That's why God invented headphones, so that I don't have to hear Michael Bolton. Right. But it's like flavor. It's very subjective. So you don't have to try anything new, and you don't have to buy anything new. Stick with the genres you already are comfortable with that already have that inspirational neuro association, but beware of the party playlist.
Now there is dark music.
Yes, there is.
You have
I used to write it.
You have punk rock. You have some music. So
yes.
What would your response be to that? I mean, like, let's say I love death metal.
Yes.
I don't love death metal. However, if I loved death metal and I'm trying to get clean and sober, it's not triggering.
Yep.
Is that going to lift me up?
It depends on your relationship with death metal. It may. Very much so. What we notice in the research is that music doesn't cause the emotion. Emotion causes the choice in music. So I'm going to say that again, because it's kind of like the chicken or the egg.
Right.
A lot of parents are concerned about the music their kids listen to, like that it's going to cause them to be depressed or suicidal. No, they reach for that music because they're already vibrating at that point, and the music resonates with something inside of them. And so that's why when you're sad, you listen to sad music, because it's matching the experience you're already having. Now, here's what they notice, particularly with adolescents, and this can be kind of extended to adults. One of 3 things happen when you're in that negative mood and you turn on what some people would call dark music, right? 1, the music acts as like this resonant catharsis where you feel heard and understood, and you express and get out that emotion, and you feel better afterwards.
Okay.
2, it doesn't do really anything. You listening to the music, but your mood preceded the music, and your mood is still there after the music. And sometimes the music will exacerbate those feelings. You'll kind of get in a spiral, and it could be an anger spiral, particularly with metal, with fast tempo music. It could be a downward spiral. What they find is that sometimes even the same music, kids will use it for all and experience all 3, depending on where they are in the moment. So it's very interesting that it's not like stamp, this is okay, This isn't okay. It's very subjective. And what's important is to have a connection with someone else to be able to talk about those experiences without any judgment. And the problem parents have is they can't talk with their kids about their music without judgment. They just suck at it. They have total amnesia. They forget that when they were a teen, their music drove their parents crazy. And that's why kids will spend more time in their bedroom listening to music and feel more connected alone in their room than down in the living room, because the music doesn't judge them and it doesn't lecture them and it doesn't scold them.
Wow. So what about the lyrics? And I'm a person that doesn't really listen to the lyrics. I'm more into the beat. I'm more into just the way that it makes me feel. I might know all the words to a song. However, I have no clue what is being said. And I can remember my mom would I would get in trouble because I would listen to things. My mom is like, "Do you know what that's saying?" And it's like, no, not really. I'm not really to it. I just like the beat.
Yes.
So what do you have to say about the about the lyrics?
Lyrics.
Coming across?
Lyrics. It's interesting. Again, the jury's out on lyrics, because when I poll kids to ask them why they listen to the music they listen to, I get just what you said. I don't really know. I just like the beat. It's bumping, it's whatever word they use. Right. But I've also had guys in group say, I used because Lil Wayne sang about it. And so I have to be honest, right? That social influence. So 3 types of influence: personal influence, my own thoughts and beliefs; social influence, which is the influence of others on me; and then environmental influence, the influence of the environment around me on me. Mm-hmm. Social influence is real. We just have to say that. And so that's why what's important is having a connection, so we feel connected, so we can check in if you're listening to something that's got crazy lyrics, and so you start thinking that'll be a good idea. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's more complex than I wish it was.
Right. So let's say would you say that, so music is therapy and music turns off the stress response? Would you say that listening to music versus playing music, which is going to do a better job?
That's a good question.
So therapeutic
the gold standard is making music. So, and making music doesn't mean learning an instrument. It just means involving your body in music. So you could be listening to the music you enjoy and then try to stay with the beat, whatever the beat is. Try to drum the beat, try to sing along with the beat, or hum it, or rap along. If you engage your body with the music, it pulls you into the present moment, because music's time-based. And so you have to be present in order to make music. So it allows you to stay present, whereas music listening, you can go all over the place.
Yep.
So music making's the gold standard, and you don't have to learn an instrument to make music.
Dancing is number 2 and listening is number 3. Right?
There you go. Any way you engage your body,
right?
That's aces.
Okay, we're coming up here to the end of the show, Tim. How can people reach you?
Yeah, you can find me. I have a gift for anybody who's listening to my voice here. One of the gifts I give away to everybody is the gift of relaxation, because we all need tools to help us reset our stress, right? So if you just go to sonicrecovery.com, I'll give you a 15-minute relaxation vacation. And that's the place that'll put you on my list. I'm also at timringgold.com. My podcast is Reduce Your Stress with Tim Ringgold. Find that where you find podcasts. I release relaxation music and interviews on that every week. And then upcoming is the Stress Elimination Summit Recovery Edition, January 25th through 29th, where we have 28 speakers talking specifically about how to reduce your stress in the context of a recovery journey and why that's so important. And you can just go to stresseliminationsummit.com to register for free.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share?
Stick with it. Find the good and focus on it.
Awesome. Stick with it. Find the focus.
Find the good.
Find the good
on it.
And focus on it. Awesome. Tim, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.